Hi, welcome to a brand new episode of Can't Think Straight. It is the third episode of the fourth season, and we are going to be primarily covering SB 49. So instead of having our usual 4 segments, we're only going to do 2 today. Just make sure we've got plenty of time to cover the full topic, because it's a lot. But we're going to go over to Kylie's crash course, and she's going to give us some information about the bill and tell us all about the politics that go into having a bill become a law. And then at the end, she's going to provide some resources and good information for those who are in need during these times. But stick around, because after that, we have an interview with Todd Carter, who is a Boone Town Council member.
I'm Kylie Carter, and this is Crash Course Can't Think Straight. And today we're going to be discussing Senate Bill 49. Senate Bill 49, titled the Parents' Bill of Rights, passed by a vote of 29 to 18 in the North Carolina State Senate on January 31st. Now, before I begin discussing what SB 49 covers, I first want to provide a brief overview of how the North Carolina State Legislature is structured and how SB 49 became a bill. All U.S. state governments are modeled after the U.S. federal government. North Carolina's legislature is called the NCGA, or the North Carolina General Assembly, and is bicameral, consisting of the House and the Senate. The North Carolina House of Representatives has 120 members, and the Senate has 50. Each legislator represents either a House or senatorial district. Members of both the House and Senate serve 2-year terms, with no limit on how many terms they can serve. So, now that we understand how our state government is structured, how do ideas become bills, and how do bills become laws? In order for an idea to become a bill, it must first be drafted. Anyone can draft a bill, a citizen, a group, or an elected official. A bill must be sponsored by a legislator and is given a first reading, where it is introduced to either the House or to the Senate. Once the bill is introduced, it is assigned to its respective committee for consideration. If it is approved, a date is set for consideration by both the House and Senate. The bill is then read and debated 3 times over and voted upon in each chamber. If the bill receives a majority vote in both the House and Senate, it becomes enrolled. Then, the bill is sent to the governor, who has 10 days to sign the bill into law or to veto it. If the governor vetoes a bill, a 3/5 majority vote is required in both chambers to override the veto. Once a bill becomes law, it is published and then takes effect. So, at what stage in this process is SB 49? SB 49 is a bill. It originated in the North Carolina Senate, and its primary sponsors are Republican Senators Lisa S. Barnes, Michael V. Lee, and Amy S. Galey. SB 49 is described by its sponsors as an act to enumerate the rights of parents to direct the upbringing, education, healthcare, and mental health of their minor children. Parents, teachers, students, and members of the LGBT community have described the bill as controversial, unethical, homophobic, and dangerous. If passed, SB 49 will have negative impacts on educators, healthcare professionals, and students, especially LGBT students. The bill will increase the workload of public school teachers without compensation, cause a strain on students' mental health, and exacerbate the devastating mental health crisis, censor school curriculums, mandate parental notification of pronoun changes, and mandate student consent for a protected information survey, which can include questions about private matters such as sexual activity. Public school teachers, who are already criminally underpaid, will be burdened with more responsibility if SB 49 is passed. Sections 76.7 and 76.8 of SB 49 establish that the teacher's curriculum and all classroom materials, including assignments and textbooks, must be available for inspection and review by parents. School curriculums and classroom materials should only require approval from individuals and groups who have a well-founded understanding of how to produce educational materials for children. Parents, by nature, have biased opinions about what content should and should not be taught in school curriculums and the manner in which such content should be taught. Educators should be trusted to create lesson plans that present appropriate information objectively without the interference of parents. Parents who want their children's curriculums to reflect their political, religious, and social beliefs should homeschool their children. But parental interference in the curriculums of public schools disadvantages other children by limiting what they can learn about and unnecessarily burdens teachers. In addition to this responsibility, according to Section 7.16, teachers will be required to notify any pronoun or name changes to students as parents. While the principle of keeping parents informed on the well-being of their children may sound like a good thing, it is important to remember that every student's home life is different and that being queer is not accepted by everyone. According to the Pew Research Center, last year, only 61% of adults feel that the legalization of same-sex marriage is good for society. Additionally, the New York Times reports that 55.1% of teenagers reported emotional abuse at home, and that 11.3% reported physical abuse at home. Many young queer students cannot freely express themselves at home, but are able to do so at school, where their identity is respected. If teachers are required to notify parents about how students choose to identify, they will be endangering the mental health and physical safety of LGBT youth. Queer students whose families are not accepting, especially those who are transgender and non-binary, will be forced to hide their identity at home and at school. Similarly, Section 7.16 also establishes that changes in the monitoring of students' mental, emotional, and physical health must be reported to parents. Students will be unable to confide in their teachers and school counselors without fear of their private information being shared with their parents. Many students have difficult home lives and benefit from using school resources for mental and emotional health. If this bill is passed, many young students will lose their support systems because the information shared can no longer be confidential. Ultimately, SB 49 will eliminate school as a safe place for free expression and will deny students and teachers the ability to develop a trusting relationship. There is currently a devastating mental health crisis among America's youth. The CDC have reports that 1 in 3 teenage girls have seriously considered suicide within the last year. The Trevor Project reports that fewer than 1 in 3 transgender and non-binary youth found their home to be gender-affirming, and that LGBTQ youth who found their school to be LGBTQ-affirming reported lower rates of attempting suicide. If SB 49 is passed, the strain on students as a result will exacerbate this crisis and have irreversible adverse consequences. Section 76.18 says instruction on gender identity, sexual activity, or sexuality shall not be included in the curriculum provided in grades kindergarten through 4th grade. Establishing legal precedent that the topics of gender, sex, and sexuality are inappropriate for young children stigmatizes the LGBT community and is ultimately homophobic. It incorrectly suggests that there is something wrong or abnormal with the LGBT community. Gallup News estimates that 7.2% of Americans and 20% of Gen Z identify as LGBT. To eliminate the representation of a community that nearly 1/10 of Americans identify as is fundamentally wrong. Not to mention, the topic of gender and sex is important for young kids to understand. A huge part of early elementary curriculums is helping children to understand aspects of their identity and how people are alike and different. Teaching acceptance of different identities to young students is essential. Another way that SB 49 addresses different aspects of students' identities is by introducing protected information surveys in Section 76.21. With parental consent, students would be required to participate in a survey that asks about information including political and religious beliefs, income, mental health issues, sexual behavior, and illegal activities. These surveys, and the fact that students cannot give or withdraw consent for them, gives parents more rights than students and reinforces the idea that parents should be involved in their children's educational experience. Public education should be free from parental influence. Censoring education is dangerous. Historically, censorship is the imposition of personal, political, moral, or ideological values, and personal values have no place in education curriculums. Mandating that teachers report information about students' gender identities and mental health is equally dangerous and will cause a strain on students' mental health. The idea of granting parents more rights in their child's education and health is not new and is not limited to this bill. This is a trend, and a massive amount of legislation is currently being debated on these topics. In the United States, there are currently 349 anti-LGBT bills, 166 of which affect education. Unfortunately, Senate Bill 49 is not an outlier. Legislators debating the legality of LGBT rights and the censorship of LGBT topics is a trend. The issue at hand is much larger than one bill and is a systemic problem that must be addressed. 20 of the 23 sponsors of SB 49 have served 2 or more consecutive terms in the North Carolina Senate. State senators are elected directly by voters and have been since 1913. If the bills that are being introduced and passed by our state government violate the rights of citizens and are not representative of the majority opinion, change is absolutely necessary. Voter turnouts for municipal elections in America are consistently shockingly low. According to the North Carolina State Board of Elections, in 2021, there was a 9% voter turnout in October's municipal elections and a 16% voter turnout in November's municipal elections. That means that during those 2 months, 91% and 84% of registered voters did not cast a ballot and failed to voice their opinions on their elected representatives. And in elections at all levels, the distribution of voter turnout by age is consistently skewed. The NCSBE reports that in the 2022 general election, 71.3% of voters aged 66 and older voted. 59% of voters aged 41 through 65 voted. 34.2% of voters aged 26 through 40 voted. And 24.1% of voters aged 18 through 25 voted. Last year, there was a 47.2% difference in turnout of young voters and senior voters. Statistically, older voters are more likely to vote conservatively and support bills like SB 49. In order to prevent bills like SB 49 from becoming bills, voters need to elect senators that have citizens' best interests in mind. Being knowledgeable about your representatives when municipal elections are, and taking the initiative to vote in every election is imperative. There are many available resources for individuals struggling with mental health, identity, and other issues related to bills like SB 49. These are the numbers for the National Suicide Hotline and for the LGBT National Youth Talk Line. On Appalachian State's campus, two valuable resources are the Henderson Center and the Women's Center, which can be both found in Plemons Student Union. The Henderson Center is the LGBT center on campus and aims to empower, educate, and affirm LGBT students and allies. The Women's Center is for all students on campus and supplies resources for mental and sexual health and victims of domestic violence. Another resource in Boone is the Hospitality House, which provides housing, hunger relief, and crisis assistance for 7 different counties in the Appalachian Mountains. The Hospitality House provides services for all people, regardless of their sexuality or gender identity. School should be a place free of persecution on the basis of identity. Gender, sex, and sexuality should have no impact on the quality of a student's educational experience. Rather than censor relevant issues that apply directly to many students in our schools, our public school system should protect and empower all students. That's all for today. Catch you next time on Crash Course with Kylie.
My name is Jenna Dunning, and I'm your host for Can't Think Straight. Today I am here with Todd Carter, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what he does and the SB 49 bill. So, Todd Carter, how are you?
I'm wonderful. In case you couldn't catch the title of the program, I'm wearing it on my jacket.
I know. You did so good with I didn't even have to give a dress code. You just knew your assignment.
I knew my assignment.
Yes.
Good at that.
Perfect. So, you work with Boone's Town Council, correct?
Yes, I was elected to Boone Town Council in November of 2020, right? 2021.
Okay.
This is I'm beginning my second year on Town Council.
Gotcha.
I have been a community organizer and activist in Boone since I moved here in May of 2011, advocating for homeless population, homeless individuals as the Chief Development Director for Hospitality House. Also helped start the local NAACP chapter, the Watauga Back to School Festival, and I started a nonprofit for queer youth, which we'll talk about later.
Awesome. Wow. Okay, so you're a busy guy, huh?
I'm a busy guy, but I like it that way.
You said you've been in this position for about 2 years now. What have you seen change since you've began your time on Town Council?
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to run for Town Council, there were 2 primary reasons. Number one, as a private citizen, I started working with Equality NC and some other community members to get a non-discrimination ordinance passed for the town of Boone. And this would have been in January of 2020.
Okay.
And it's after, not to get too wonky in politics, but it was after the state bill lapsed, the one that took the place of HB2, the anti-trans bathroom, all that crap, right? So, so that lapsed. So that basically they put something in place that said towns and municipalities could not pass non-discrimination ordinances. Well, that ended, and so we immediately took it up to get it passed. I was not happy with how it went with the town. So
yeah, it's been for you.
It was, to me, another kick the can down the road type thing, and I was like, by God, I'm going to run for town council and we're going to pass a non-discrimination ordinance.
Yeah.
So we just passed it in January.
Congrats.
This year.
Yeah.
It goes into effect June 1st, 2023, Pride Month.
Yeah, perfect timing.
And we now have a Human Relations Commission with the town of Boone that's made up of private citizens and some students. We have a student on there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And this commission, we did our first training with the North Carolina State Human Relations Commission, and he said, you have the most comprehensive Human Relations Commission duties, and one of the best non-discrimination ordinances I've seen in the state. Wow. So you should be very proud.
Yeah,
so we are very proud that passed unanimously.
Yeah.
We have a lot of support. And with SB 49 on the horizon, it's even more important that the town of Boone shows in our policies that we are welcoming and inclusive.
Absolutely.
And supportive.
That's, I was going to say those are two, or that's a really big endeavor, and it's so impressive to see, how you stepped up to the plate and you're like, you know what, by God, I'm going to fix it myself if no one else is, Well,
Boone has a great, well-earned reputation of being this welcoming, fun, cool, hip, progressive place, but it's not in the town policy. Right. And if your actual, the way you are, if your character, if your town's, if it doesn't show in your policy, it doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
If you say, we're so welcoming, we're so great, but then someone is denied housing because they're queer, is discriminated against because of the type of hair they wear for an ethnic hairstyle, then we're not that welcoming because we're not really doing anything to protect people and put our values on paper. And that's why it was so important to get this NDO passed and get this Human Relations Commission up and running. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Because I know what you mean. One of the things that brought me to APP is this the history of it being so accepting. And I mean, it's leaps and bounds for my small town, but I'd be lying to say that I still haven't faced some discrimination from, the select few who still believe in like outdated, or I guess have outdated opinions. So there's a lot that gets swept under the rug just because, we're like a green school, we have, the big fan, right?
Right.
And then you find out that it's not really like that. So the work isn't done. And while I'm on that note, what are your opinions on the bill, SB 49, and how, like, speaking of work that needs to be done, how do you think that, I guess, people like you and I with a platform can put in work to make sure that this legislation doesn't continue, at least in our town?
Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to be registered to vote. We have to vote for the right people. If SB 49 does get passed by the House, it's sitting at the House right now, it was passed by the Senate 39-14.
Yeah.
If the House passes it, there's only one General Assembly member away from us losing that would override a governor's veto. Right now, the governor has veto power by one.
Yeah.
So it's frightening. I tell people all the time we're one vote away from becoming Texas and Florida, and that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
So you got to register to vote. You've got to write, show up, and bug the hell out of your state representatives to tell them this is not fair, this is not right. Here is my story. I know trans kids that go to elementary school here. The fact that this is targeting children is outrageous to me.
It's inhumane, to say the least.
It is absolutely inhumane.
It's absolutely ridiculous because, I have friends and family members who have friends too who are in, school, like elementary school, for example. Like, they are kids. Let them be kids. If he wants to wear a skirt to school, you don't need to tell his parents. Like, it has nothing to do with them.
Well, and someone's sexual orientation and gender identity is supposed to be protected under Title IX. So what SB 49 does is, in fact, is trying to override federal law. That forced outing is supposed to be not allowed under Title IX.
Yeah.
And what this is going to do, it's going to force outing to kids who are going to put them in harm's way to potentially unhelpful, harmful and non-accepting families. It's going to completely erase their identities from any sort of educational component. Can't read, Heather has two mommies. It's so outrageous that it's targeting the kids, and the kids are the most vulnerable part of our overall community, and they need to be supported and uplifted. And teachers, both my parents were teachers, should not be put in the place
Absolutely.
of having to out some kid or face being fired.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
And you'd think that they'd be more focused on, things like school shootings than the fact that, or dealing with teachers who have to, take on possible trauma with that. There's so much more violence, and I feel like just conflict in so many other places. And teachers are just so underpaid that it's so far out of this. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
How about funding teachers? We rank 34th in the state now in teacher pay. 34th. I remember when North Carolina was number 1. Thanks to William Friday, Jim Hunt, we had a very pro-education governorship, and now the leaders don't care about that.
Yeah.
There's gridlock in the General Assembly. They would rather pick on elementary school kids and their parents. And the next step, I fear, is it's gonna take healthcare options away from parents for their trans kids and for trans adults.
Right.
I cannot overstate enough. 1 vote away.
It's
from
unreal.
being Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. We'll throw them in there next to their stupid drag queen bill.
I can't with that. I know. I'm going to have a whole nother 20-minute segment.
We need to be on with the Boone Barbies and just have a
Please.
shout session.
I was going to say, no, I would happily go out and just, it's absolute, it is bullshit. That's a great word for it. I feel that there is just, every time the community accomplishes something, I feel like it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And how would you, I guess, help people stay motivated and not get defeated? Because I feel like in this community, we face a lot of defeat. We face a lot of 1-vote scenarios.
So I moved here from Southern California. I went to school in Chapel Hill, spent 16 years in a great bubble in Laguna Beach. It was, queer heaven.
Yeah, sounds like
I
it.
moved back here to be closer to my family, who was living in Ashe County at the time. Within 6 months, I was just standing at my SUV, pumping gas, was called out the window. And I was like, what just happened? Like,
Right.
I had not even heard that word in 20 years.
Right, yeah.
And somebody just called me that. And fast forward 9 months, Amendment 1 was on the ballot, and I was sitting with my parents. We were watching the election returns for Amendment 1. Amendment 1 was the marriages between 1 man and 1 woman. This was in 2012. It was May of 2012. I was sitting between my parents and my dad's football coach and my mom's retired teacher. We're all 3 sitting there crying about the results. I'm crying. My 6'4" football coach dad is crying. My mom is crying. And suddenly, it clicked in me. Somewhere there's a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old kid contemplating suicide right now. And I have the privilege of sitting here and crying with both my parents over the results. So that right then and there, I snapped out of my bubble and said, I have to do something about this.
Yeah.
Which led to the formation of the High Country LGBTQ Youth Alliance, which became me being this guy.
Yeah.
So the thing that I think is most important is visibility. Visibility matters. And I went from, I did the marches in my 20s. I marched on Washington. And I was like, oh, I'm happy. I'm past this. I'm in my little bubble.
Right.
So I immediately went out the next day and put a rainbow flag on my car. And I had a rainbow sticker on my car in 20 years. And now my car is like a political billboard. And I started buying T-shirts because I believe it starts with visibility, especially for our youth. If they can see another person, even if they're living in an unsupportive home, dear God, hopefully not a dangerous home, but I know a lot of kids that do live in dangerous homes here that can't come out. They have to at least be able to see.
Yeah. That it's not stigmatized. I feel like we've got to do
queer,
that.
to see the rainbow, to see out and proud trans people, gay people, queer people, lesbians, bi. I mean, that is important, and I think that's where it starts.
Yeah.
It starts with being brave enough. And my mom says, I'm afraid you're going to get shot one day because of all the things I have in my car. And I'm like, but I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for visibility, which is why Boone proclaimed pride for the first time ever. Again, are we living our values or not? So I made sure we proclaimed June as Pride Month. We hoisted a pride flag at Town Hall. But the biggest impact of visibility, shortly after I put that sticker on my car, a lady pulls up behind me in the grocery store, and she says, "Is that your car?" And I'm thinking, "Oh,
geez,
Lord."
yeah, I know. A heart drops to my ass.
I said, "Yes, ma'am, it is." And she said, "Can I give you a hug?"
Yeah.
She said, "My 16-year-old son is in the grocery store right now, and we pulled up behind your car." And he said, look, mom, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. Look." Visibility matters.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's honestly a really great point to sort of wrap up on, because I know when I spent my entire, I guess, first 18 years of my life very closeted. I came from a small town with a lot of conservative views, and my friend group was not very supporting of any part of my lifestyle or the hidden lifestyle I had. And I remember when I finally came out, I started dressing the way I do. I cut my hair, I started looking like the person I felt I was. And I remember when I came out, I had a couple of people from my old school, and they had said that they were it feels weird to say proud, but in a sense proud. They're like, "I'm glad that you were able to find the strength to be who you are, because I know that it's helping others find that." And now our school is very much, it's getting better. I hear from my younger brother, it's getting better. And I just have to agree with you that visibility is so important. There's not a single, I walk into a Smithfields and I hear, I could hear the heads turn, I'm like, oh, geez. But even during those times, I have to remind myself, just what you said, I'm not doing this for me. It is for me because this is who I am. But
Right.
really, I get up out of bed every day and I put on the clothes I wear or I want to wear. And I listen to music I want to, and I dress this way, and I have rainbow pins on my bags. And even on the days where I'm like, man, life would be a hell of a lot easier if I didn't have to deal with the comments or the questions, But it's who I am, and I'm very proud. And I also want to just be able to set an example, because I feel like with SB 49, so many people are hiding.
You're absolutely right, and it's like you were hiding not your lifestyle, but you were hiding your life. You were hiding who you are.
Yeah.
And when I want to get to the point where us existing is not an act of protest.
Yes.
But it is. And people who have privilege, like me, as a white, cisgendered, gay man, proud queer, who does not use that privilege to advance and march for Black trans lives and advance our cause, I get more mad at them than I do the haters.
Yeah, because it's like they don't even know any better, the haters.
Do not sit in your privilege and not do something while our kids are being targeted, our kids are dying. Use your privilege, stop being afraid, and stand up and be visible. So we've got to leave it better for the next generation, or we have failed.
Yeah, then what were we even here for?
I mean, do you think, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera were, hoping for the lives they had? They stood up for what was right and what they believed in.
Right.
We got to do better.
I agree.
We got to do better.
I totally agree. Well, on that note, I think that's about all the time we have, but I think that's a great thing to end on, is just, you got to be better than the person you were the day before and continue to climb that ladder so we can get to a point where there is no stigma, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no protesting anymore. It's just us. I don't want to go into a Smithfields and have head turned,
Right.
I'm looking forward to that day, and I believe that you're doing good work to help us get there. So thank you very much.
It is absolutely my calling and my duty to do everything I can.
And I think that wraps up this episode. So thank you all for watching and tuning in. I hope you learned something, because I definitely did. I feel like I got some great information out of both of those segments. Keep in mind that now is not a time to back down or shy away. Visibility is important, and your voice matters. So don't be afraid to speak up and stand out. I'll see you guys next time.